They don't come with warning signs. They don't show up and say, I'm here to pull you down. But you feel it in their words, in their tone, in the way they look at your growth like it's an offense. Weak people, they disguise their bitterness as sarcasm. They pretend their envy is just being real. But make no mistake, when they try to trigger you, it's not about you. It's about the mirror you hold up to their fear, to their insecurity, to everything they refuse to confront in themselves. See, your progress is painful to those who have surrendered. Your discipline is offensive to those who've given up. When you begin to elevate your life, when you start putting in the work, developing discipline, gaining confidence, and chasing something real, something meaningful, people around you start to notice. Not everyone will celebrate it. In fact, some people will feel threatened. Not because you're doing anything to them, but because your progress becomes a mirror that reflects their lack of it. Weak people, those who are unwilling to confront their flaws, invest in growth, or take responsibility for their own lives, see your improvement as a personal attack. They don't understand it, they don't like it, and most importantly, they can't control it. So what do? They try to trigger you. They come at you with sarcasm. They roll their eyes when you speak about your goals. They minimize your efforts, dismiss your work ethic, and take little passive jabs hoping to spark a reaction. It's subtle sometimes, almost masked as humor or honest feedback. But if you pay attention, you'll see the pattern. Weak people want to drag you back down to where you are because your rise is a reminder of the effort they've refused to give. They would rather pull you into their world of comfort and complacency than level up and join you in growth. It's easier for them to insult you than to improve themselves. And what makes it worse is that these attempts often come when you're starting to find real momentum. When you're changing your routine, making sacrifices, staying disciplined, and making progress, they sense the shift. They see the different how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you no longer entertain the distractions they still cling to. That difference makes them uncomfortable, not because of anything you did, because it puts pressure on their excuses. It challenges their laziness. It calls out their indecision and self-sabotage without you saying a single word. Control is their weapon of choice. If they can't control your actions, they'll try to control your emotions. If they can get under your skin, make you second, guess yourself, or throw you off course even for a moment, they feel empowered. That momentary control becomes a win for them because in their world, that's the only victory they know how to get. They've mastered manipulation instead of discipline, and they'd rather control people than change themselves. So they play the mind games. They bait you into defending yourself. They poke at old insecurities, hoping you'll break. But here's the truth. No one tries to trigger someone they don't feel threatened by. Weak people never go after someone who doesn't challenge them. They come for the ones who are rising. They zero in on those who are shifting the energy, raising the bar, and refusing to settle. That's why they come for you. It's because they recognize strength, even if they don't admit it. But since they can't match your growth, they try to interrupt it. Since they can't stand beside you, they aim to stand in your way. It's a defense mechanism. They feel powerless in their own lives. So they look for situations where they can feel powerful by making someone else feel small. You'll see it when you share your plans, and they laugh. When you talk about your goals, and they roll their eyes. When you finally begin to show confidence, and they question your change. They call it arrogance because your confidence reminds them of their insecurity. They label your ambition as obsession because it highlights their laziness. Everything you do becomes a reflection of what they're not doing, and that makes them uncomfortable. But instead of using that discomfort as a reason to grow, they use it as fuel to attack. And if you react, if you take the bait, if you let them drag you into their chaos, they win. Because for that moment, they're in control. You've given them access to your emotions, your attention, your time, and that's exactly what they want. They don't want your success. They don't even want your friendship. They want your focus. Because when you're focused on them, you're no longer focused on your path. They attack what they can't control. But more than that, they attack what they can't understand. They don't understand how you stay committed when it's hard. They don't understand why you wake up early, keep going after failure, and sacrifice comfort for progress. It doesn't make sense to them because they've never felt the fire that drives people like you. So instead of asking questions and learning from you, they make assumptions and criticize you. It's the easier path, the lazier path, the weaker path. But to them, it's the only one they know. Their triggers are rooted in fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being exposed. Fear of being forced to face the truth about themselves. That fear turns into bitterness. That bitterness becomes envy. And that envy transforms into petty comments, judgment, gossip, and insults. That's how they cope. They try to sabotage the things they secretly wish they had the courage to pursue. They're not mad at you. They're mad at themselves for not being you, and they're hoping, desperately hoping, that you'll give in, that you'll get tired, that you'll fall off, that you'll react emotionally, spiral, and question if all your effort is even worth it. Because if they can make you quit, even for a second, it validates the choice they made to never begin. The strength you carry isn't shown in how loud you speak or how quickly you fire back at someone who disrespects you. Your strength is measured in silence, in how calmly you carry yourself when chaos surrounds you. Weak people, the ones who haven't done the work to evolve, will always look for ways to trigger you, to get under your skin, to make you feel small, because in doing so, they feel momentarily powerful. But your greatest weapon is not your ability to strike back. It's your ability to choose not to. That is the most unsettling response you can give to someone who thrives off negativity, the absence of reaction. Your power is in your reaction because your reaction determines where energy flows. If you respond with anger, with frustration, with resentment, you are handing over your emotional state to someone who didn't earn it and doesn't deserve it. And what's worse, you are allowing someone else to dictate how you feel, how you think, and what you do next. That's not power. That's control, but not by you, by them. True self-mastery begins when you can be provoked and still remain in control of yourself. That's when you've elevated. That's when you've evolved past the level they're trying to drag you back to. Every time someone tries to trigger you, you're being invited into a game they've already mastered. A game of petty insults, manipulation, emotional traps, and immaturity. But it's a game where the only way to win is not to play. Because once you engage, they've succeeded. Not because they defeated you, but because they managed to pull your attention, your energy, and your peace away from what truly matters. And they do this because they know they can't compete with you in purpose, in discipline, in integrity. So they try to compete with you in chaos. But chaos is not your arena. Reaction is not your path. You didn't get here by answering every insult or proving yourself to every critic. You got here because you focused, you built. You stayed consistent even when no one clapped for you. And now, when that energy starts to radiate, when your presence alone makes people uncomfortable, some will try to trigger you just to see if you'll fold, just to see if the fire inside you is real or just for show. Your reaction is your declaration of self-respect. It's you saying, I don't need to respond to everything to prove I'm strong. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. Power moves quietly. It doesn't need to yell. It doesn't need to seek attention. It's in the way you walk past disrespect without letting it live rent, free in your mind. It's in how you hold your peace even when every part of you wants to defend yourself. That's not weakness. That's restraint. And restraint is one of the highest forms of strength there is. You have to realize that not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Not everyone has earned the right to be heard by you. Some people talk just to get a rise out of you, because your peace bothers them. They want to see cracks in your armor because your self-control exposes their lack of it. So they'll test you, they'll push you, they'll throw shade and wait for the storm. But when you don't give them what they want, when you stay cool, calm, and focused, they crumble. Because their whole strategy depends on you losing yourself. Think about how much energy you waste every time you let someone get to you. Every time you replay that insult in your head, every time you draft the perfect comeback, every time you imagine the argument you could have had, you're bleeding energy that could have been used to build, to grow, to level up. But instead, it's being drained by someone who hasn't even put in a fraction of the effort you have. That's why choosing not to react isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's you protecting your energy like it's gold, because it is. Emotional control is one of the most underrated skills in the world. Everyone wants to react. Everyone wants to snap back, prove their point, defend their pride. But not everyone can master the art of restraint. Not everyone can stay rooted when the wind of insults starts to blow. But when you can, you become untouchable. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a person who has full control of their emotions. A person who doesn't let outside noise dictate their inner peace. A person who refuses to play games beneath their level. So the next time someone throws a shot at you, trying to stir the anger inside you, take a breath. Take a step back. Remind yourself that this is a test, and you don't need to pass it by reacting. You pass it by remaining grounded, by holding your composure, by choosing your peace over their drama. That's the real win. Not the argument, not the clapback, not the validation from strangers. The win is knowing that nothing anyone says or does has the power to pull you off your path unless you give them permission. And you've worked too hard to let anyone with no vision, no discipline, and no purpose rent space in your head. They want your reaction because they can't match your results. They want your energy because they can't create their own. They want your focus because they lost theirs a long time ago. So protect your reaction like it's sacred. Because it is. It's the difference between staying on course and getting distracted. Between building something great and getting pulled into something pointless. Between being led by purpose and being driven by ego. You are not the problem. You never were. What you are is a living, breathing example of what's possible when someone decides to rise above their circumstances, do the work, and break free from the patterns that keep most people stuck. But for some people, especially those who have settled, avoided responsibility, and abandoned their goals, your very existence becomes a threat. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you reflect something they've been running from, a truth. And truth, when seen in the form of someone else's progress, can feel like an accusation to those who haven't grown. When someone is triggered by you, it's rarely about what you said or did. It's about what you represent. You walk into the room with confidence, and they feel exposed. You speak with clarity, and they hear judgment, even if you said nothing about them. Your discipline, your consistency, your refusal to give up, those are not just traits. They are silent reminders of what they chose not to become. And that's why they push back. That's why they attempt to bring you down, criticize you, gossip behind your back, and minimize your progress. They're not attacking you. They're reacting to the discomfort your presence creates within themselves. You are a mirror, not a perfect one, but a sharp one. And when a person who's been avoiding their potential sees that mirror, they're forced to look at everything. They've ignored their fears, their laziness, their excuses, their failures. Most people don't want that. They'd rather break the mirror than change their reflection. And so they lash out. They label you. They mock your ambition. They question your motives. Why? Because it's easier to try to make you look bad than to confront their own lack of effort. This reaction isn't rooted in logic. It's emotional. It's instinctive. They don't even fully understand why your success bothers them, why your confidence irritates them, why your drive frustrates them. But it does. And that confusion turns into projection. It turns into blame. It turns into judgment. They start crafting stories in their minds to make sense of their discomfort. Maybe you're too obsessed. Maybe you're trying too hard. Maybe you're not as happy as you seem. These narratives are not about you. They're about their need to protect their ego from the truth you expose simply by existing. It doesn't matter if you've been kind. It doesn't matter if you've supported them or cheered them on. If they're not ready to face themselves, your growth will always feel like a personal insult. And this isn't limited to strangers or distant critics. It can come from people you care about, friends, family, coworkers, people who once rooted for you until your progress started to outgrow their comfort zone. When you were struggling, you were relatable. When you started winning, you became a threat. That shift doesn't say anything about you. It says everything about their mindset. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Many of them don't even realize they're doing it. Their reactions are subconscious. They don't wake up planning to tear you down. But when they see your discipline, it reminds them of their procrastination. When they watch you make sacrifices, it highlights their unwillingness to change. When they witness your transformation, it triggers the voice inside them that's been telling them to do more, but they keep ignoring it. That inner conflict becomes external, and you become the target. So you have to learn to separate the noise from the truth. Don't internalize their discomfort. Don't absorb their projections. Just because someone reacts to you negatively doesn't mean you did anything wrong. In fact, in many cases, it means you're doing something very right. Growth disturbs people who are committed to comfort. Progress intimidates people who've settled, and confidence will always provoke those who secretly wish they had it. You can't dim your light just because it shines too brightly in the eyes of someone who hasn't found theirs. You can't shrink your presence to make others feel more secure in their own limitations. You can't pause your journey to wait for people who have no intention of moving. You were not put on this path to make everyone else feel comfortable. You were put here to become, and becoming requires discomfort, not sometimes for the people watching you evolve. And what's ironic is that many of the people who are triggered by you don't even dislike you. They admire you, but they don't know how to process that admiration without turning it into envy. They respect your drive, but they mask that respect with criticism. It's a strange dynamic, one where they both want you to succeed and secretly hope you fall, because your success is too painful a reminder of their own unrealized potential. You have to stand strong in the truth that their reactions are not your responsibility. You're not here to fix their mindset. You're not here to heal their insecurities. You're here to grow, to rise, to build, and to keep becoming the person you're meant to be. The more you grow, the more you'll see these triggers in others. And the more you'll realize that it's not personal, it's internal. You're just the mirror. You weren't born to shrink. You weren't placed on this earth just to blend in, to silence your voice, or to downplay your greatness so other people can feel comfortable in your presence. You were born to stand tall in who you are, to embrace every ounce of your potential, and to walk boldly in your purpose, whether the world claps for you or not. But society doesn't teach us that. From a young age, you're taught to be humble, but in ways that often mean don't stand out too much. You're conditioned to believe that confidence is arrogance, that ambition is greed, that being proud of yourself is something to be ashamed of. And over time, without realizing it, you start to dim your light, not because you aren't capable, but because you don't want to make others uncomfortable with how brightly you shine. But here's the truth: your light isn't the problem. The issue lies in those who've chosen to remain in the dark. When you walk into a room with confidence, when you speak with clarity, when you carry yourself with purpose, some people won't know how to handle that. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence alone forces them to look at the parts of themselves they've neglected. Your strength reminds them of the strength they've never tapped into. Your courage highlights their fear. Your ambition makes their excuses look small. And so they do what weak people always do when faced with someone who refuses to play small. They criticize, they mock, they try to diminish. They say things like, "You've changed," as if evolving is a crime. They'll call you too confident, as if it's your responsibility to second guess yourself to make them feel better. They'll tell you you're too much or too focused, too intense, because your commitment to growth reminds them of their lack of it. But you weren't made to water yourself down. You weren't designed to walk softly through life just so you wouldn't disturb the insecurities of others. You were built to be powerful, to be bold, to pursue what sets your soul on fire, and to do it unapologetically. And make no mistake, when you decide to live like that, it will trigger people. Not everyone wants to see someone fully alive. Not everyone wants to be reminded that playing it safe or ignoring their dreams. So when they see someone rising, someone who isn't afraid to take up space, speak up, and lead with purpose, they respond not with celebration, but with resistance. They try to shame you into shrinking. They'll say you're full of yourself, when in reality, they're just empty inside. They'll accuse you of being self-absorbed, when in truth, they're just struggling to find their own identity. But here's what they don't understand you didn't get here by accident. You fought battles they've never seen. You've stayed up late wrestling with doubt. You've failed, fallen, and gotten back up more times than they can count. Your confidence wasn't handed to you. It was I-earned through struggle, through discipline, through relentless effort when no one was watching. So don't ever apologize for it. Don't ever feel guilty for standing in your power. The people who truly understand what it takes to build something from nothing will never ask you to shrink. Only those who haven't done the work will. Your greatness was meant to be lived out loud, not in arrogance, but in truth. Not to overshadow others, but to inspire them. But inspiration often looks like intimidation to those who aren't ready to rise. That's not your burden to carry. It's not your job to dim your glow so that others can avoid confronting their own darkness. Your only job is to keep shining, to show what's possible, to walk in such alignment with your calling that others are either forced to elevate or move out of your way. Shrinking doesn't serve the world. It doesn't make you more relatable. It makes you more forgettable. And you weren't born to be forgettable. You were born to leave an impact, to challenge norms, to raise standards, to be a living example of what happens when someone refuses to give up. That kind of presence, that kind of energy, it changes rooms. It shifts dynamics. It awakens something in others. And yes, sometimes it also stirs up resentment. But if everyone is comfortable around you all the time, you're probably not pushing hard enough. Growth is uncomfortable. It disrupts. It provokes. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So if you ever find yourself feeling guilty for your success, for your ambition, or for your progress, remind yourself that you've earned every step. And if someone is bothered by your light, it says more about their shadows than your shine. You were not placed here to be small. You were placed here to become the most powerful, focused, and purposeful version of yourself possible. That requires boldness. That requires resilience. That requires the courage to be seen, even when being seen makes other people uneasy. Because the world doesn't need more people hiding behind fake humility. It needs real leaders, real voices, real examples of unapologetic strength. Real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need applause, validation, or loud declarations to feel secure. In fact, true power often moves in silence. It doesn't waste time proving itself to doubters. It doesn't get rattled by critics. It doesn't collapse under pressure or seek attention for every accomplishment. Strength, when it's authentic, is steady. It's unshakable. It speaks through actions, not arguments. And it's exactly that kind of quiet, grounded strength that most people underestimate until it becomes impossible to ignore. You'll notice something interesting when you begin building something meaningful. In the beginning, no one sees it. No one applauds your early mornings or your late nights. No one claps for the discipline it takes to say no to distractions, to keep going through setbacks, to hold yourself accountable when quitting would be easier. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It's just you consistently doing the work, silently stacking bricks, while others are busy chasing attention. But that's where real power grows, in the shadows, in the silence, in the unseen hours that shape you into someone who doesn't just perform once, but shows up every single day. And because your strength is quiet, some people will mistake it for weakness. They'll assume that just because you're not constantly defending yourself, you must have something to hide. Just because you're not broadcasting your every move, you must not be making any. They confuse loudness with leadership, noise with confidence, and reaction with relevance. But that's only because they've never learned what real strength looks like. Real strength doesn't flinch when insulted. It doesn't need to retaliate when challenged. It knows that its presence alone is enough. When you don't respond to every provocation, when you don't rise to every petty comment or every attempt to trigger you, you're not being passive. You're being strategic. You're showing emotional maturity. Because when someone tries to pull you into their drama, into their cycle of insecurity and ego, and you choose not to engage, you're protecting your peace. You're not ignoring the challenge. You're just refusing to lower yourself to their level. And that restraint, that calm in the middle of someone else's storm, is a display of strength that few people ever master. Weak people want you to react. They want to see you stumble, lash out, lose control, because that makes them feel powerful. It gives them a sense of importance. But when you stay grounded, when you hold your composure, when you smile and keep moving forward without saying a word, you take away their power. You show them that they can't touch you, not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you've outgrown it. You've evolved to a place where your peace is more valuable than any temporary emotional victory. Think about how many times you've seen someone react and lose everything in that moment. A reputation, an opportunity, respect. One wrong word, one emotional outburst, one lapse in judgment, and it's gone. That's what happens when people confuse reaction for strength. But when you carry real strength, you understand that not everything deserves your energy. Not every battle is worth fighting. Some things are better left unanswered, not because you're afraid to respond, but because you've already won by not stepping down. Your results are your response. Your consistency is your statement. The way you show up, keep building, keep improving while others are distracted by trying to get a rise out of you. That's power. And it's the kind of power that speaks volumes without saying a word. You don't have to shout when your work speaks for you. You don't need to argue when your life becomes undeniable proof of what you've built through discipline and focus. And that's what rattles weak people the most, not the things you say, but the fact that you don't need to say them. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone because your journey, your transformation, your growth is all the evidence anyone needs. They see it, they feel it, and it bothers them because while they're wasting time reacting, your is evolving. While they're trying to stir up chaos, you're creating something solid. While they're caught in cycles of noise and insecurity, you're climbing quietly, steadily, relentlessly. This is why emotional control is a strength that should never be underestimated. It allows you to navigate challenges without being overwhelmed by them. It gives you the clarity to make decisions that align with your values, not your emotions. It shields you from the manipulation and distractions that are constantly trying to pull you off course. And it separates those who talk about doing something from those who actually do it. The truth is, the world is filled with people who are loud, reactive, and driven by ego. But few are truly strong. Few have the discipline to remain focused while others try to provoke them. Few have the self-awareness to walk away from chaos without needing to win the moment. And fewer still have the inner power to keep building in silence while the rest of the world waits for reaction. So you continue showing up, continue building. Let them wonder why you're so calm, so composed, so unshaken. Let them try to figure out how you never let them get to you. Let them talk while you work. Let them doubt while you deliver. Because in the end, strength doesn't need an announcement. It reveals itself through results. Every trigger you encounter is not just a moment of frustration. It's a test of who you are becoming, a test of how much control you truly have over your emotions, a test of your growth, your awareness, and your ability to choose your response over simply reacting. And the truth is, the more you evolve, the more you'll be tested. The more peace you gain, the more people will unconsciously try to disrupt it. The more focused you become, the more distractions will appear in the form of criticism, jealousy, disrespect, and doubt. But none of these are there to break you. They're there to reveal you, to show you exactly where you stand in your journey and whether you're truly ready for what you say you want. It's easy to be calm when no one is pushing your buttons. It's easy to stay grounded when everyone is supportive, when everything is going smoothly, and when no one is challenging your worth. But strength isn't measured in comfort. It's revealed in pressure. And that pressure often comes in the form of people who intentionally or unintentionally try to get a reaction out of you. These people don't always come at you with open hostility. Sometimes it's subtle. A backhanded compliment, a sarcastic comment, a passive-aggressive remark that they hope will make you second-guess yourself. And the question isn't if you'll be triggered. The question is, what will you do with the trigger? Weak people hope you'll explode. They hope you'll spiral. They hope they can pull you into a conflict that validates their own chaos. Because if they can throw you off course, even for a second, it makes them feel like they have some form of control. That's why the trigger is a test. Because if you allow someone else's energy to control your reaction, you're no longer the one steering your ship. You're no longer operating from strength. You're reacting from emotion. And that's exactly where they want you, off balance, unfocused, distracted. But if you can hold your center in that moment, if you can pause, breathe, and observe instead of react, you win. Not because you said the perfect thing or shut them down, but because you didn't let them reach what they were aiming for, your peace. When you choose presence over impulse, when you recognize the game they're playing and simply refuse to play, you're not backing down, you're leveling up. That moment of restraint becomes a declaration of maturity. You're saying, I'm not the person I used to be. You can't get to me the way you once did. Every time you face a trigger and respond with discipline instead of drama, you elevate. You show yourself that you're not ruled by emotion, that you're not easily baited, that you're capable of being the bigger person, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because you understand that your energy is your most valuable currency, and not everyone deserves to spend it, especially not those who show up in your life just to drain it. Triggers can be disguised as criticism from someone you once looked up to. They can come from people who are supposed to support you but seem more invested in your failure than your success. They can even come from within, from your own self-doubt, your own fears, your own unresolved wounds. But no matter where they come from, the process is the same: recognize, reflect, and respond with intention. That's the practice. That's the path of growth. Not reacting out of habit, but responding with awareness. Not letting other people's projections define your identity, but choosing your identity through how you show up under pressure. And the more you pass these tests, the more trust you build within yourself. You stop being at the mercy of other people's moods and opinions. You begin to anchor yourself in something deeper: your vision, your principles, your purpose. Some people will resent your ability to stay calm when they're trying to create chaos. They'll interpret your composure as arrogance because they don't understand it. They live in a world where every emotion is acted upon, where every insult is returned, where conflict is the default setting. But you've chosen a different frequency, one that doesn't require retaliation to feel powerful, one that doesn't need to destroy others to protect itself, one that recognizes that true strength lies in restraint, not reaction. So when someone tries to push you, test you, provoke you, remember, it's not about them. It's about you. It's about who you're becoming. And every trigger is an invitation to stay centered, to stay aligned, to prove to yourself that you're not the person you used to be, that your growth is real, that your peace is permanent, not just situational. And the more you choose to stay grounded in those moments, the less power the outside world has over your inner world. You become less reactive and more responsive. You start leading with intention instead of emotion. You stop being a slave to your impulses and become a master of your mind. That's how you step into true power, not by conquering others, but by conquering yourself. Because every trigger you master is one less chain holding you back from your next level.